Tonight on Reporting Scotland, peak time train fares return to ScotRail services. The cost of some rush hour journeys have now doubled. Peak fares were scrapped as part of a trial a year ago.
That's added a fair fit, about 30 odd quid to my journey a week.
The trains are getting more and more crowded again, and now we're paying more, so it doesn't seem to equate.
Quite a big difference, especially like a £5 a day.
Also on tonight's programme, criticism from homeowners in Aberdeen over the level of compensation for properties built with potentially dangerous concrete.
I'm either going to have to make myself homeless because I can't afford to pay the rent for the place that I'm being offered, or I'm going to have to make myself bankrupt.
Aberdeen City Council is hoping to purchase more than 100 privately owned homes in Tory affected by RAAC. A judge in California rules that the woman who inspired the soccer character in TV drama Baby Reindeer can pursue her defamation lawsuit against Netflix.
And coming up in the sport, we'll hear from the Celtic camp in Germany as they prepare for the challenge of Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League.
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Monday's programme. Now, if you travelled by train during rush hour today, you'll have noticed a difference, a big one, because peak time fares have been reintroduced on ScotRail services, almost doubling the cost of some journeys. The fares were scrapped as part of a trial a year ago, but passenger numbers failed to increase enough to allow the scheme to pay for itself. So, from today, peak fares will apply again on weekdays during the morning and evening commute periods. Stephen Gordon has more.
On Scotland's railways, a readjustment is required for rush hour passengers. The return of peak time rail fares means having to dig a bit deeper to pay for their daily journey.
Well, I was just sort of working it out in my head coming out there. I'm like, that's added a fair fit, about 30 odd quid to my journey a week.
The trains are getting more and more crowded again, and now we're paying more, so it doesn't seem to equate.
If they keep putting the prices up, it's just not great. And I work from home some days, but still it's quite a big difference, especially like a £5 a day.
The end of the off-peak all-day pilot introduced last year will be felt on routes around the country. A rush hour trip from Stirling to Edinburgh will cost £19.90. Elgin to Inverness goes up to £23.90 compared to £15.70 off-peak, while the peak time ticket connecting Scotland's two biggest cities rises to £31.40.
Announcing the return of peak time fares, the Scottish Government said the extended trial hadn't convinced enough people to swap their cars for the train and that it couldn't continue in the current financial climate. The decision has been criticised by opposition politicians and by rail unions.
ScotRail say passengers can still save using discounted season tickets and flexi passes, but at Glasgow's main bus station today, signs of pricing influencing people's routine.
So usually it was about £10.40 for a return to Glasgow from Stirling. That's jumped up to about £17.50. So trains are kind of out the window for me at the moment.
The bus I'm getting today is less than a tenner, whereas the trains tend to be like £29. So that's something that's important.
At Dalnenny Station, near the Forth Bridge, the owner of this kiosk worries that coffee is a luxury that could be squeezed.
When things get dearer, those luxuries drop off a little bit. So yeah, you'll still get people who prioritise their coffee, but maybe not as often. Maybe it'll become, 3 days a week rather than 4 days a week.
The trains, meanwhile, are still running on a reduced timetable that's been in place since July, a hangover from a recently resolved union dispute.
I can understand people's frustration. It's great news that all the 4 trade unions have agreed to the pay deal. We're now working hard to check driver availability, get trains in the right place so that we can improve the timetable as quickly as possible, and as soon as we've done that, we'll let our passengers know.
For now, though, as far as fares are concerned at least, normal service has resumed. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland, Haymarket Station.
Well, our news correspondent Jamie McIver is at Queen Street Station in Glasgow for us this evening. Jamie, so with peak time rail fares back, passenger numbers over the coming months are going to be watched closely.
They certainly are, Laura. The big question is whether some commuters will switch to the bus or start working from home to a greater extent, or even start commuting in their cars again, or will they simply absorb the effect of today's increase? In trying to answer that question, it's interesting to look at what we know about the effect of the trial over the past year, and it's hard to say with absolute certainty just how much of the rise in passenger numbers was down to cheaper fares and how much of it was down to people getting back into their old habits after the pandemic. So that begs the question of how people might respond to today's increase. Safe to say any rise in car use would be a concern to some politicians, and also safe to say that some would argue that working from home has got significant downsides to consider too, not least the economic impact in some town and city centres. This is going to be watched very closely in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, and Stephen touched on it in his report, but some people are complaining that peak time fares are back. They're paying more, but they're still facing a reduced service. Have we got any idea when they're going to get back to full timetable?
Yes, ScotRail hopes to give some information to passengers in the coming days, but the earliest we can expect any significant improvements to the timetable would be next Monday. New rotas need to be produced, then timetables need to be worked out and published. Now, much of the reduction in services over the past few months has been in the evenings and at the weekends, but some peak time services were affected too. For example, the Glasgow to Edinburgh route, trains were running every half hour rather than every 15 minutes. Safe to say too that ScotRail is well aware that if we don't see a significant improvement in the timetable soon, it's going to be under some tough scrutiny.
OK, Jamie McIver in Glasgow's Queen Street Station, thank you. Residents in Aberdeen who face having their homes demolished due to the presence of potentially dangerous concrete say they're angry after receiving further details of the compensation they might receive. The City Council is hoping to purchase, through voluntary acquisition, 138 privately owned homes in the Tory area, among 500 affected by a material known as wrack. Well, our reporter Louise Hosey is in one of the estates affected tonight. Louise, what have residents been saying?
Well, Laura, it's been nearly a year since residents here were first told that their homes may contain wrack, and in August the council approved plans to demolish these properties. Now, some council tenants have already moved and been rehomed, but the council is now attempting to buy private owners' homes through voluntary agreement. These homeowners have been told they will receive the market value of their property, which crucially deducts the cost of these wrack roofs, and that's a cost that could run into tens of thousands of pounds. Homeowners have also been told they're entitled to home loss payments, and now the council has confirmed that these home loss payments will only be up to £15,000. Well, one homeowner that I've spoken to, Amy Bruce, has told me that she fears that this could leave her with £50,000 to pay back on her mortgage, and she says that's a cost she simply can't afford.
I'm either going to have to make myself homeless because I can't afford to pay the rent for the place that I'm being offered, or I'm going to have to make myself bankrupt because I can't afford to pay the mortgage that's outstanding, and I'll never be able to buy another property. It's going to kill people. At the end of the day, the stress is going to take such a toll on people's health.
So, Louise, clearly really distressing for homeowners involved. What's the council saying?
Well, I spoke earlier to the council co-leader Christian Allard, and he says that they are doing everything they can to help homeowners, but how much help they can provide really depends on each individual case and the valuation of each individual home. He also says that extra funding is desperately needed from both governments.
Let's get a round table with UK government and Scottish government, and let's find a solution. Something. It will never be perfect. Nobody wants to leave their home, and I can understand that. I live myself in Tory. I know people who live in these houses. You know, there is no way that anybody thought that that would happen to them, and I can understand that. But now it's time to move on.
Well, the Scottish Government has told us that it continues to work closely with local authorities who are affected by RAAC, and that it's continuing to urge the UK Government to make more funding available. We have contacted the UK Government for comment and we are awaiting a response. However, they have previously told us that this issue is devolved.
OK, Louise Hosey in Aberdeen, thank you. The four contenders to be the next leader of the UK Tory party, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat, are all trying to win the support of Scottish Conservatives. The party's conference in Birmingham is turning into a super hustings. Our Westminster correspondent David Porter has been speaking to Scottish representatives supporting each of the candidates.
One of these four will be the next Tory leader. But how they perform will affect the party in Scotland, particularly in the run-up to the Holyrood elections in 2026. The most experienced of the contenders is James Cleverly, a former Foreign and Home Secretary. His supporters insist he is a natural unifier.
The party needs united, and if anybody from the left or the right extreme sides of the party, I don't think this is the time for that. I think we need somebody to, as the message says in the hall, rebuild, and I think James is a guy who could rebuild the parties.
Great. Also standing is the former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch.
See you soon, Malcolm. Kemi's offering a vision for the future of this party, a renewed party that speaks to a new generation of voter and to the issues that we face in the second half of this decade and indeed moving into the rest of the century. That's why I believe she has what it takes to be the leader of the Conservative Party.
The current bookies' favourite is this man, the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick.
I think Rob Jenrick has got the best ability to pull the party together, because one of the biggest criticisms we heard on the doorsteps was the fact that we were divided as a party and we were perceived to be, fighting with ourselves rather than taking the fight to Labour. I think Rob is uniquely placed to unify the party and bring us together.
Tom Tugendhat, the former Security Minister, has also thrown his hat into the ring.
I'm backing Tom Tugendhat to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. I think Tom is the candidate who can speak to all four nations of the United Kingdom. And to me, as a Scottish MP, that's what's really important. Tom leads from the front and he wants to be the leader for the whole of the country. And he's proven that in the past. He's got a record of service. He's going to bring that service to the country and bring us into the future.
Those who watch the polls say all the candidates are unknown quantities, and the party will need to learn new tunes.
It can no longer simply rely on the argument, we are the only party that stands up for the union. The UK Labour government is clearly going to say no to a referendum. The Labour Party is now the most popular party amongst unionists north of the border, so the Conservatives now need to create more strings to their bow than simply the tendency hitherto to say, we defend the union.
In just over a month's time, one of these will be the new Tory leader. David Porter reporting Scotland at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham.
And BBC Question Time is in Dundee this week, and they're looking for people to be in the audience and ask the all-important questions. On the panel, Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth, the Secretary of State for Scotland Ian Murray, Shadow UK Energy Minister Andrew Bowie, the Deputy Leader of the Scottish Lib Dems, Wendy Chamberlain, and the commentator Ian McWhirter. And if you want to be in the audience, then go to the Question Time website to apply. To some of today's other stories now. And the minimum price that alcohol can be sold at increased today. It's gone up by 30%, meaning the minimum price for a bottle of vodka rises from £13 to £17, while a standard can of lager will go up by 30 pence. It comes as alcohol deaths in Scotland reached a 15-year high. Police are appealing for more information following the death of a man in Livingston. Officers investigating the death of the 50-year-old man last Thursday say it's been treated as unexplained. Emergency services were called at around 2 a.m. to Bankton Lane, which remains closed, as does Bankton Glade and the surrounding footpaths. And Edinburgh City Council says it will bill Oasis for costs it incurs when the band's reunion tour comes to Murrayfield next summer. The local authority says it spent £40,000 during Taylor Swift's 3 sold-out concerts in June. A new policy of recovering 100% of costs related to commercial events will come into force at the start of October. Now, the woman accused of stalking baby reindeer creator Richard Gadd can pursue her defamation lawsuit against Netflix after a ruling in the United States. A judge in California said the show was wrongly billed as a true story, with no effort to fact-check the story or disguise Fiona Harvey as the inspiration for Martha. Well, let's speak now to our arts correspondent, Pauline McLean. Pauline, just remind us what this is all about.
Well, Laura, the Fife actor and comedian Richard Gadd first performed Baby Reindeer at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2019, and then he developed it into this black comedy drama with Netflix, which aired in April this year and has since been seen by millions of people. Unfortunately, one of the people who saw the programme and didn't like it was Fiona Harvey, who identified herself as the stalker and the inspiration for Martha, and she was furious at the depiction because it was billed as a true story, so she took Netflix to court.
So what is happening now then?
Well, I think the phrase "a true story" is going to be pivotal to this case. The judge, the American judge, working out what was going to happen next, has referred to an article in which Richard Gadd admitted he had reservations about that line, but Netflix pressed ahead with it. It's obviously garnered even more attention in the last couple of weeks because 2 weeks ago it won 6 Emmys at the Emmy Awards. So all the attention is on it. And I think what will now happen is that the focus will be on Fiona Harvey's claim that Netflix intentionally inflicted emotional distress. And if her lawyers can demonstrate malice on the part of Netflix in choosing to call the story fact when they knew it was in fact fiction, it could result in substantial damages of up to $170 million.
OK, interesting to see how it all pans out. Thank you, Pauline. Tonight's main news again. Peak time fares return to Scotland's trains, with some commuters paying almost twice as much as last week.
And still to come in the sport, Scotland's Jacob Fernley makes a huge step forward in his tennis career.
Now, it's one of the world's most prestigious environmental awards. The Earthshot Prize, launched by Prince William, aims to find solutions to the big challenges facing the planet. And now, for the first time, a Scottish-based company is in the running. And, appropriately, their work marries two of our most important industries, whisky manufacturing and fish farming, as Gillian Sharp reports.
A high-tech solution, growing algae in the sterile darkness of these vats instead of taking fish from the sea for the essential nutrient omega-3. Now there's recognition on the shortlist for the Earthshot Prize.
It's phenomenal. We're absolutely really excited to be a part of that team, and I think the last winner from last year for our category said that conservation is a team sport, and we're just really excited to be a part of the team.
And this is where it all starts, from one single algae cell. Air is pumped through the solution. Wild fish themselves get omega-3 from what they eat, so this actually simplifies that process.
Omega-3s at the moment, marine omega-3s come from mincing up wild fish, and so the problem is that we need more and more omega-3s, but we can't sustainably take more fish out of the sea. And so for us it was really about solving the problem of reliance on wild fish for such an essential nutrient.
And this is the finished product, an oily algae powder. At the moment, it's added to fish feed and pet food. The hope in future is that it could be eaten by humans.
Being able to marry the whisky industry with the aquaculture and the salmon industry in Scotland is huge. This is going to be our base, but we'll very much be looking at exporting the technology across the world.
Byproducts from the whisky industry, like here at Portofleith Distillery, are mixed with the algae before it's put into stainless steel vats to grow. Earthshot Prize finalists are in the running to receive £1 million prizes, announced in November. Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland.
OK, let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis, and we are looking ahead to a big night for Celtic.
We are indeed, Laura, because what a start it's been in Europe for Scottish teams in general, but yes, of course, it continues this week. Thanks very much. Yes, hello there. Well, the Celtic manager, Brendan Rodgers, says he's managing a club that are now competing instead of just qualifying for the Champions League as they prepare for a stern test in Germany. The Premiership leaders trained in Glasgow this morning before flying to take on Borussia Dortmund without injured defender Cameron Carter-Vickers. Celtic have struggled in Europe's top club competition in recent years, but a terrific start to the season, which included a Champions League victory against Slovan Bratislava, has heightened belief that Brendan Rodgers' side can progress in the competition.
I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for us to be really, really difficult to play against and give everything we have. And like I say, bring our game, which is to press, to fight, to run. We know at times their quality drives you back, and then it's having that resilience in those moments. But we also know that we have a game that can hurt teams as well with our football and our speed. So I'm really excited about seeing that.
Well, it's been a sensational start to the season for Celtic. They strengthened their lead, albeit on goal difference, at the top of the Premiership with a 6-0 hammering of St Johnstone. They've won all 9 of their games they've played this season, including that win over Slovan Bratislava in their first Champions League outing, and they're averaging more than 3 goals per game. But standing in their path tomorrow are a real European heavyweight. Although Dortmund finished 5th in the Bundesliga last season, and that's where they sit in the German league right now after some inconsistent results. They did, however, beat FC Bruges in Belgium last week, and they won the Champions League as well back in 1997. They're a team known for their impressive fan base, and one Celtic player has recent experience of their famous stadium atmosphere.
We have also an amazing atmosphere in Celtic Park, so it's kind of the same, but it's everybody knows how to handle it. If you can play in Celtic Park, you can play everywhere. Also, it's good that I know the stadium, but like I said, we just need to perform and look to ourselves, and that's what we are doing really good at the moment. We stick to the basics, and we are in a good mood, and we want to do the same thing tomorrow.
Rangers manager Philippe Clement said he was confused by the awarding of a penalty to Hibernian as his side edged to a 1-0 victory at Ibrox to reduce the gap to leaders Celtic and Aberdeen to 5 points. A wonder goal from Tom Lawrence was enough for Clement's side to record their 4th successive victory. A tight offside call initially halted celebrations there, but VAR had a look and the goal was given. But just before half-time, John Souttar was adjudged to have handled the ball in the box, presenting the visitors with an opportunity to level from the penalty spot. Mikola Kukarevic's effort was saved smartly by goalkeeper Jack Butland, but it didn't stop Clement from expressing his confusion post-match.
I don't see what John can do different. So the ball comes, he turns himself, he goes with his leg towards the ball to try to block it or to get the ball. So his arm is up, he sees the other one touch the ball, so he puts his arm in. And that moment, when his arm is in front of him, he gets the ball on the elbow, and because of the contact, his arm goes up. They cannot let their arms disappear also. And it's a short distance from 1 meter, 1.5 meters. So there's totally no intention.
Now, the man dreaming of following in Andy Murray's footsteps has taken a huge leap forward in his career. Scotland's Jacob Fearnley has broken into the top 100 in the world rankings for the first time after winning his 4th Challenger Tour title of the year. The 23-year-old beat Frenchman Harold Maillot in straight sets at the Orléans Open in France and has jumped from 126th to 98th in the world. Well, Fearnley's rise up the rankings has been nothing short of meteoric. This time last year, he was barely in the top 2,000, but after graduating from university in Texas, he was soon on the move, up to 512 by the start of this year. He then had quite the summer, impressing on the British grass court swing and memorably taking a set from Novak Djokovic in the 2nd round of Wimbledon. Challenger titles then followed, and now he's into the top 100, and I suspect there could be a lot more to come from the 23-year-old from Edinburgh. Yeah. As rises go, they're quite impressive.
Pretty impressive. What a year for him.
Amazing, yeah, and I'm sure it will kick on from there.
Absolutely. We've still got some interest in the tennis
we
world.
Do. We find a way.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, Laura.
OK, now let's go over to Ben Phillip to see what's happening on tonight's 9.
Coming up on the 9 tonight, as the minimum unit price for alcohol rises again, we'll ask whether the policy is working. We'll also have the latest from the Middle East as Israel says it plans to launch a ground offensive in Lebanon. And we hear from author Jilly Cooper about the latest adaptation of one of her novels starring David Tennant. See you at 9.
OK, now let's take a look at the weather with Judith. We're definitely in the autumn now, aren't we?
Yeah, but we've got a pretty good week ahead, actually.
Oh,
but yeah. And there's a beautiful village of Kouros. Definitely worth a visit, isn't it? Thank you very much, Laura. A very good evening to Baltasound there behind me. Shetland seeing some good sunny spells today, the best sunshine today, and the highest temperatures 14.4 for Baltasound. And more sunshine to come. We have this high pressure steaming in from the Atlantic. It'll drop its anchor right across Scotland, protecting us, bringing a fine, dry, settled week. So not looking too bad at all as we enter into October. Now we have the dregs of an old weather front through parts of southern Scotland at the moment. Some thicker cloud and bits and pieces of rain. That eventually clears away, then dry with clearing skies coming in from the north. Always a wee bit more in the way of cloud in the east and just a few spots of rain for the south-east. Lows generally 5 to 8 Celsius with quite a keen northeasterly wind for eastern coastal areas, particularly down towards the southeast. Into tomorrow, lots of dry weather, some early sunshine, still that legacy of cloud across the south for a time before clearing away, and then a cracking day for the northern as light winds here, dry with some spells of sunshine pretty much across the board, maybe the odd shower getting into Caithness, and you'd be very unlucky if you caught one, but there is the potential for the odd light shower for parts of the northeast and Angus. A bit more in the way of cloud here, cool right on the east coast itself, and thicker cloud too at times around the border area with the odd showery Lothian as well. But best in the west tomorrow, lots of sunshine, the highest temperatures, light winds. We could see 16 Celsius towards the open area and up into Lochaber as well, and looking good for the Western Isles too. It'll feel pretty nice in the sunshine with shelter from that easterly wind in the east. Into tomorrow evening. Well, it's dry, clearing skies pretty much across the board. Extensive mist and low cloud expected through the central lowlands, I should say, and up around the Inverness area. It'll be chilly in rural parts as well. So a chilly start to Wednesday. Mist could be slow to clear first thing, but lots of dry weather, plenty of sunshine. A pretty fine day all in all. And as we head towards the rest of the week, a lot of dry weather in the forecast with light winds. Some unsettled weather coming for the weekend. That's your forecast.
Lovely, not bad at all. I'll let you go and visit.
You look so surprised.
I know. Thanks, Judith. OK, now tonight's main news again. Peak time rail fares have returned, with some passengers paying almost twice as much as last week for their commutes. And residents in Aberdeen whose homes face demolition due to the presence of potentially dangerous concrete say they're angry after receiving details of the compensation they might receive. And that is Reporting Scotland. The late news is around 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone in the team, good evening.